Have you ever had that distinct, unsettling feeling, like you were running away from something specific, something you dreaded, only to turn a corner perhaps years later and find yourself standing suddenly face to face with the very thing you tried so hard to leave behind? It's a peculiar, almost eerie twist of life, isn't it? This persistent feeling, this nagging intuition, that the very steps we take consciously, deliberately, to avoid a certain outcome, somehow, paradoxically, propel us directly, almost magnetically, towards it. It's a profound irony that seems woven into the fabric of human experience. Today, we're diving deep, plunging into this fascinating paradox, the ancient and enduring idea that people often meet their destiny, not in spite of their efforts to evade it, but precisely because of them, finding it waiting on the very paths they constructed to avoid it. Now, this isn't some new pop psychology trend, not at all. In fact, this idea echoes, it reverberates, down through the ages, resonating powerfully in our oldest myths, legends, and stories. Think again of the quintessential tragic tale of Oedipus, destined by a chilling prophecy to kill his father and marry his mother. His parents, King Laius and Queen Jocasta, were naturally horrified. They desperately, frantically tried to prevent this unthinkable fate. Their solution: to abandon their infant son, believing this decisive act would sever the threads of prophecy. Yet, as the story unfolds, we see that their very act of avoidance, this attempt to cheat fate, was the catalyst. It set in motion the complex, unavoidable chain of events: Oedipus's adoption, his later journey, the fateful encounter at the crossroads, his arrival in Thebes. That ultimately led him, step by inexorable step, directly to the horrifying, devastating destiny they sought so desperately to escape. It wasn't just the gods' decree. It was human action, driven by fear of that decree, that paved the road. This ancient story serves as a powerful, sobering early exploration of this very concept. It warns us, perhaps, that fighting fate, or what we perceive as fate, can sometimes be the very mechanism by which it unfolds. The prophecy itself, once known, becomes a potent psychological force. But this isn't just relegated to the dusty realm of myth and ancient Greece. Modern psychology offers us valuable, practical insights into why this perplexing phenomenon might occur in our own complex lives right now, today. You see, our conscious attempts to avoid something, whether it's a fear, a potential outcome, a type of person, often lead us to make highly specific choices. We take particular routes, accept certain jobs, avoid certain social circles, make decisions we absolutely wouldn't have considered if not for that driving need for avoidance. Maybe it's choosing a safe career path devoid of passion, purely to avoid the risk of failure in a field you love. Or moving across the country to escape family conflict, only to find conflict arises in new relationships because the underlying patterns haven't been addressed. These choices, born from fear and avoidance, ironically, can meticulously construct the very circumstances, the exact situations we were trying so hard to evade. Our avoidance creates a vacuum or a specific direction that life, or our own subconscious patterns, rushes to fill. Let's consider again that person desperately trying to avoid failure in their career. It's a common, relatable fear. Their fear, this constant, gnawing anxiety about not measuring up, about failing, might manifest in several ways. It could lead them to procrastinate endlessly on important projects, telling themselves, "I'll do it when I feel more inspired," or "I just need to research a little bit more," delaying action until it's almost too late. The sheer amount of mental and emotional energy spent on the act of avoidance, on scanning the horizon for threats, on worrying, on tiptoeing around risk, becomes a powerful, tragically self-fulfilling prophecy. The focus on not failing prevents them from focusing on succeeding. The world, after all, is an incredibly complex, intricately woven web of interconnected events, causes, and effects. Think of it like the butterfly effect in chaos theory. A tiny action here can have unforeseen, large-scale consequences elsewhere. It's a system far too complex for any single person to fully predict or control. So when we try to consciously sidestep one potential outcome, say diligently avoiding any hint of emotional vulnerability in relationships to prevent getting hurt, we inevitably, whether we realize it or not, step onto a different, less chosen path. And that new path has its own unique landscape, its own set of unforeseen obstacles, consequences, and encounters. The theme repeats even if the details change, or sometimes these avoidance-driven paths lead us to something entirely unexpected, something we never even considered, yet which fulfills a strikingly similar, destined role or teaches a similar core lesson in our personal narrative. Life seems determined to present us with certain challenges until we learn to face them differently. Let's revisit that example. Someone avoiding a specific type of relationship. Say they were hurt by someone overly critical and controlling in the past. Now they actively try to avoid anyone exhibiting those traits. They might consciously seek out someone who seems the complete opposite, perhaps someone incredibly passive, agreeable, never offering an opinion. Initially, this feels like a safe haven, the perfect antidote, only to find themselves, eventually, perhaps months or years later, facing similar underlying emotional challenges, just dressed in a new guise. The costume is different, as we said, but the underlying theme, the fundamental lesson life seems to be presenting about healthy connection, mutual respect, or personal needs, often persists until it's truly addressed at its root, not just avoided on the surface. We must heal the original wound, not just run from situations that poke at it. And all this inevitably brings us to the fundamental, perhaps unanswerable question, doesn't it? What exactly are we talking about when we use the word destiny? Maybe it's more about confronting the inherent limitations of our own perspective, our finite knowledge, and our capacity for genuine control over the vast complexity of life. Maybe it highlights the intricate, often unexpected, and sometimes deeply ironic dance between our conscious intentions and the messy, unpredictable reality we actually inhabit. Our perception of fate or destiny might simply be the meaningful pattern we recognize or construct only after the events have unfolded, looking back and trying to make sense of our journey. It's the story we tell ourselves about the path, not necessarily a map drawn before we started walking. Our very human attempts to control our future, to manage risk, to ensure safety, to guarantee happiness, while perfectly natural, understandable, and even necessary to a degree, can sometimes inadvertently blind us. It's like trying so hard not to spill a glass of water that your tense grip makes you more likely to knock it over. So, reflecting on all this, where does this leave us? What practical wisdom, what actionable insight can we take away from exploring this profound paradox? Does acknowledging this pattern mean we're merely puppets of fate, helpless leaves tossed about by winds we cannot control, destined to walk a predetermined path no matter what we try to do? Acknowledging this paradox might also foster a deeper, more grounding sense of acceptance. Not passive resignation, but an active embracing of the fundamentally unpredictable, often messy, complex, and ultimately uncontrollable nature of life itself. There's a certain peace to be found in letting go of the illusion of total control. So instead of focusing solely and intensely on what specific outcome we desperately want to avoid, perhaps the more fruitful path involves shifting our attention inward, gently, curiously, turning our gaze towards understanding the underlying fears, the core beliefs, the unmet needs, the past wounds that are actually driving that powerful urge for avoidance in the first place. It's about addressing the root, not just pruning the branches. It's about shifting focus from avoiding the negative to mindfully choosing and moving towards the positive, towards growth, connection, and authenticity, even when it feels risky. So now I turn it over to you. What are your thoughts on this complex idea? Have you personally ever experienced a situation where your determined attempts to avoid something seem to lead you right back to its doorstep, maybe in a different form? Share your stories, your reflections, your interpretations in the comments below. I'd genuinely love to read them and learn from your experiences. Let's discuss this fascinating, sometimes frustrating, interplay between our choices, our fears, our intentions, and the often surprising unfolding tapestry of our lives. Thank you so much for joining me on this deeper exploration of the ironic, profound dance between avoidance and destiny. If you found value in this discussion, if it sparked some thought or reflection, and you want to delve deeper into more philosophical ideas and psychological concepts together, please consider giving this video a like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and maybe hit that notification bell so you don't miss our future explorations into the big questions. Until next time, keep questioning, keep reflecting, and keep exploring the beautiful, challenging mysteries of life.